Hello, Ranger Swamp here, and this is a discussion that occurred a couple of weeks ago known as the Top 5 Fighters. This video is going to be a brief synopsis on what occurred during this discussion, and of course, sort of the brief reasonings behind our picks. The full discussion is up on twitch.tv/RangerSwamp. Under the highlights, you'll be able to see the Top 5 Fighters, and of course, if you want to see more top 5 discussions, be sure to swing by twitch.tv/RangerSwamp every Saturday as you get to see more of what these discussions are about, and of course, to get more in-depth explanations behind our reasoning and choices. With that being said, enjoy, and here is the top 5 fighter picks.
I will start with my honorable mention. Again, I tend to lean towards using the honorable mention as a dishonorable mention. I recently watched. So he's the master. He goes by Master. He's one of the executioners in the Akudama Drive series. It's on Hulu. Is it on Hulu? I forget.
Yeah, it's on Hulu. I've seen it. All right. I do not have any questions so far.
Okay.
So I'm gonna move on to my honorable mention. This honorable mention is actually the reason why I wanted to do a list like this, and he goes by many names, but I think only one is his most iconic, and that is Soul Bad Guy.
Okay. So my number 5 is going to be Iron Man himself, but not Iron Man, Robert Downey Jr., the actor, but not Robert Downey Jr., the Sherlock Holmes that is played by Robert Downey Jr. I believe this scene is from the first movie of Sherlock Holmes, and the reason I think it's so awesome is because of the way he fought and the way the movie showed how he fought.
All right.
And your number 5.
My number 5 is actually a relatively newer one. This anime is on Netflix. This is the character Oma Tokita from Kengan Ashura. And Oma is in Kengan Ashura. There's tournaments known as the Kengan tournaments, and it's like an underground fighting arena where all these like really big companies come together. They bet fighters' lives on in these matches. Yeah. And so Oma Tokita is known as the Ashura in these fights. He represents this man, what's his name? Kazuto Yamashita or something like that. And he sort of represents his company, and the point. And they kind of have like their own miniature plots in between. Like Kazuo's son got into a whole situation with assassins, so Oma basically had to win the match in order to prevent his son from being assassinated.
All right. So my number 4, I'm gonna go slightly sideways on this for you guys because we have 4 serious fighters, including Sherlock Holmes, who's a serious fighter, more of a detective. But my number 4 is going to be from the Kung Fu Panda series, Oogway.
Ooh.
Oogway. Reason I picked him is because he's the best fighter, greatest Kung Fu master within the Kung Fu Panda series. He created the Dragon Warrior, or the lore for it. He beat the hell out of, what is it, Tai Lung?
Yeah, Tai Lung.
Yeah, Tai Lung. Yeah. He beat the hell out of him easily.
Yeah. Didn't he just 3-tap him and he went down?
Yeah. Yeah. The only thing that stopped this wonderful creature was Lady Death herself. And no one could defeat that person or entity.
I definitely do like that pick.
Thank you.
All right. So, for my number 4, this one is this one's a bit of a classic. He's been around since the 1990s. This one is known as Heihachi Mishima, and he comes from a game series known as Tekken. Now, there are some interesting things to know about Heihachi. One, there is a younger version of him, but that's only in the spin-offs. So I use the original, older version of him.
Yeah.
And Heihachi is basically known as the best fighter in his world. And this is a world where there are beings known as devils, which his son is a devil. Because there's like a whole lore behind, like there's a devil gene and it passes down to... Heihachi has the strength, they say he's as strong as the devil, but he's human entirely.
I think we can move on to our number 3.
Yes.
Because our number 3 matches, I think we should show both of them. Did you want to lead off the discussion, or?
You can lead off the discussion.
Yeah, go ahead and lead off the discussion, because I'm sort of interested, because we both picked Yujiro from the Baki series, Baki the Brawler. Yujiro Hanma. Isn't he's called the strongest creature in the world, something like that?
They say he's the strongest, either the strongest man or strongest being. Like, they couldn't even classify him as human.
Yeah. So, because we did match, I didn't know where to place him. I'm not necessarily a fan of his as far as a character. I think he's certainly flawed as a father. Even as a human, just because he's mean. But his fighting skills, he knows how to fight. He really proved that in his fight. I think the last fight we saw, or I saw of him, when he fought the Chinese Grandmaster, was it Kokao?
Yeah, it was it was something along those lines.
Yeah, and that was a 146-year-old fighter who still had amazing fighting skills. And in my estimation, even that Grandmaster, who's probably the second strongest fighter that we've seen, he was still no match for Yujiro. He's just... This character is just leagues above everyone else. There's hints that his son, Baki, is... what's Baki's real name? Do you know?
It's Baki. It is Baki Hanma.
Okay, so I thought there was a second. Didn't he have a second son?
Jack. I think Jack's either his Baki's half brother or step. I think it's Baki's half brother. So he is Yujiro's son.
All right. So I know my number 2 is going to confuse basically everyone, except the people that know about this book series. So if anyone knows this book series, please let me know. The picture here, you'll see a flag. That's a white flag with a golden crane flying across it. This comes from the Wheel of Time book series. That has to, it's going to be it's going to be a new series on Amazon, which I just heard about. But my top fighter is Lan Mandragon. But Lan plays an important role throughout this series. It's about 10 to 11 books. And it's following Rand al'Thor, who's the Dragon Reborn. Basically, in simple terms, a person who's able to use magic or the one power in this context.
My number 2 is a character that I would say has a common theme. He emanates one thing, and that is youth.
Yes.
And that is Might Guy.
Yeah.
Also known famously as Guy Sensei. So, Might Guy, you're probably wondering, how does this guy of all people end up as number 2. My guy has no ninjutsu, just like his father had no ninjutsu, and just like his student who he found had no ninjutsu, but he practiced one thing, taijutsu, the physical martial arts that ninjas are all taught. And my guy is highly proficient in taijutsu. He's so good, he's able to use the ability known as the 8 gates. The 8 gates is what allows you to reach into your inner potential, but the problem is the further you go down, the higher the price you pay on your body. It takes a toll. My guy has been able to go to the 7th gate with no repercussions for his basically a large part of his fighting.
So I'm going to go on to my number 1. So we are going to miss a lot of them. So if you have picks, let Ranger Swamp know. But it's going to be my man from Hunter x Hunter. It's going to be Isaac Netero. So the chairman, the 12th chairman of the Hunter Association, went toe-to-toe with Miriam himself and did so semi-successfully. He did end up dying. Spoiler alerts, but this is an old anime, so I don't feel too bad. But he ended up defeating the Chimera King in the end, in his own way. The reason I picked him as my number 1 is just because the way he learned how to do the zero hand is that he practiced to do 10,000 punches. It took him 18 hours to do it the first day, and then after 2 years, he was able to do it in, I forget the time. I think it was 2 hours or 1 hour. And he trained himself at the age of 40 to become this amazing fighter. And I think, I don't think I've even breathed in and out 10,000 times. And he's doing punches every day for 2 years. And the way he took out the Chimera King, kudos to you, young man, and being in my number 1 slot. I think this also shows that he was very nice to the recruits. He was always nice to Gon and Killua, and try to train them in his own way. But he also took it to the next level when he had to fight the strongest character that we've seen animated. I don't know how far the manga's gotten and if it's gone to other villains out there. But that's my number 1. I'm going to stick with that. It just shows practice. And I think all the individuals we picked so far all do that in their own way. Maybe Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes likes to do coke a lot, so maybe Sherlock Holmes just has a natural ability where he doesn't train as hard. But Isaac Netero is my number 1. I'm sticking with that.
I like that one. I think really cool pick. And I think really shows you how dangerous this character really is, because he only showed that power once.
Yeah.
And it shows you how much he's truly held back this entire series up until that very moment. And it was crazy how until then you only seen just like a little fraction of what he's capable of.
Yeah. Yeah, they even alluded to the fact that he was older, that only at half the strength that he was when he was younger too. So it would have been amazing to see a prime younger Netero fight the Chimera King and see how that would have ended up. I think the result would have been the same, just because the Chimera King, Chimera King would have waited even a little longer before he killed his mom and waited till he fully matured, I think that would have been amazing too. But the storyline was excellent. I do like Hunter x Hunter. We were talking about this yesterday, where I think one of the most, for me at least, one of the most rewatchable animated series is Hunter x Hunter, because it goes from one story arc to the next, and it doesn't drag. Unlike another anime that I will not mention, One Piece. So, yeah, I like this. I like that character. And in the end, he still won. He completed his goal. All right.
My number 1. So here's a fun fact. I'll get into that in a second. This character is known as Yusuke Urameshi from the series Yu Yu Hakusho. And the fun fact is, Yu Yu Hakusho was made by the same creator of Hunter x Hunter. So it's funny that both number 1s come from the same characters from the same author, in a way.
Yeah. Yeah.
The reason why I chose Yusuke Urameshi is because I feel like Yusuke truly represents the soul of a fighter. Even before Yusuke got his powers, his whole ideal is if someone picks a fight with me, I'm gonna go ahead and fight them. And he basically was known to never lose a fight. There were entire gangs that would come up to Yusuke to try to fight him, and he would just basically beat them all down. And it got to the point where even the adults started fearing Yusuke. They thought he was such a troublemaker that they thought he was like a demon. And so, of course, even after Yusuke gets his spirit powers, the one thing I like about Yu Yu Hakusho was Yusuke has a limited amount of bullets he has for his spirit gun before he can't use the power anymore. And so basically, he can only use that power so many times in a day before he has to basically recharge. Yeah. So a lot of fights in Yu Yu Hakusho are Yusuke having to use his own fighting skill and have to rely on his own fighting ability, while using the spirit gun is either a finisher or even to just sort of start the fight off. He can't just use a bunch of them at the same time. So it's not like a lot of like what you normally will see where, let's say in Naruto, where characters will rely on ninjutsu to sort of fight in the battle. Yusuke has to really truly rely on himself and his own strength in order to get through a battle. Well, that's the reason why I chose this, because despite having all these powers, it's the limitations that his powers have that cause him to really go with his more usual fighting instinct rather than to just say, alright, let me just use my abilities.
Yeah. Alright. And and that's a good series too, because I've never watched it.
Yes. I would say Yu Yu Hakusho is probably one of the best anime series, but not many people will probably watch it because it is an older anime, and so the art's not as good as the newer anime. Because that's pretty good.
Like me,
it has pretty good fight scenes, but because it's older animation, they don't flow as smoothly as the newer anime does.
Yeah.
So it's probably, I can see how that's gonna be hard to get into, because it's like when you compare it to Demon Slayer, the fights are not that great, but I felt like there was a lot of really good fights in this show.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, I may put that on my list, but my list is so long. I don't know. It's just tough to pick and choose what you want to watch, because I'm so far behind on Black Clover. I'm so far behind on, like I said, I'm going to get through One Piece right now, but I'm just taking a break just because it's each story arc is 80. I don't know why I'm still talking about One Piece. We should talk about, next night would be top 5 One Piece disappointments, and I'll be talking for 3 hours. No, that's cool. He doesn't look very intimidating, but he's a tough fighter, good fighter?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, I think that's it for me. I don't have anything to add. Did you have anything else to add?
No, I think, I really like the list. I think it's nice because you kind of get to talk a lot more characters that don't get the spotlight, because let's say some of them aren't like the super strong ones.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I think for all of them except Yujiro and then Yoruhashi, I think for a lot of them they're certainly not overpowered, and then I guess that was the whole point in our conversation you and I selected. I mean, we could certainly go most powerful fighters or most powerful characters in one of our discussions down in the future, but and then One Punch Man would certainly be on that list. But yeah, I like this list too, and I think it's just different. I tend to try to pick from different genres. You know, again, like I said, The Wheel of Time, look out for that one. And then Obviously, it's going to be heavily focused on for us because that's what we usually watch, or the anime or comic books, or comic or superhero movies or shows. I don't know. I do like the list too. I agree with you. Oogway though was the one that I think, along with Might Guy maybe, best epitomizes what a fighter should be and doing good and being positive.
Yeah.
And that's the list. I guess you consider that to be quite the wrap. Of course, not every single character could have been chosen. However, as many characters as possible were picked for this list, and many diverse characters as you could have gotten. If there's any sort of disagreements, of course, everyone has their own opinion. That's fine, of course, but these are all opinionated. These are all meant to be fun, and yeah, of course. If you don't know who any of these characters are, of course, be sure to check out their respective series. Many names have been dropped, and hopefully you get to see new fighters. But that'll be it for this video. Hope to see you again for the next discussion. See ya.